Welcome back. Yes, at the time that I'm recording this, there's apparently a trade that's in the pipeline that's going to get announced. That being said, I wanted to do this video. Once this video is done, I can go back. We'll find out who's been traded. It looks like Tarasenko is going to the Rangers. We'll see what the return looks like, but that's what's out there, and so we'll see what happens. But I wanted to talk about 8-year contracts today because we saw Bo Horvat sign a deal, and immediately people piled on with all of these reasons why it's a bad deal or all these reasons why it's a good deal. I wanted to look over 8-year contracts in the National Hockey League, and I've even thrown in a 10-year deal just as kind of like as an example. Now, there are bad contracts that get bought out. Happens every year, right? We're going to see it again this summer where contracts are going to get bought out, and there's going to be the debate over, is this better to have bought this out? Would it have been better to wait until after the contract expired altogether and not have to worry about the cap penalty? But there's some 8-year deals that are worth looking at because there's different reasons guys sign 8-year deals. And there are fans who support one idea and not the other. There are those who are okay with paying for what a guy could do. And when I say could, there is the chance he may not, right? There's also those who will pay for what the player's done. This is the way the traditional contracts were made. You know, you would see a guy in age 29 or age 30 getting that big rich contract, finally an unrestricted free agent, getting to sign for big money, and very often those contracts ended up not looking great 3 or 4 years later. And I don't think we're in that same situation now. I don't think we see as many contracts that end up looking really bad. I think GMs have gotten better at it. Not perfect. Obviously, there's still going to be some contracts that leave us scratching our heads. But I know over the last few years there have been summers where I've said, "Hey, these contracts all kind of came in where I thought they would." Now I'm not going to get into the one that was just signed by Horvat because it doesn't kick in until next year. It's the same reason I'm not going to get into Miller's. Miller's is also a 7-year deal. These are all 8-year deals minus the one for Jordan Staal on the board here. So when Jack Hughes signed his deal November 30th of 2021 with the New Jersey Devils for 8 years at 64 million, there were a lot of questions about whether or not Hughes. Now, for me, it was a question of, okay, so is he going to be able to stay healthy? Is there going to be a problem with him being able to stay healthy? Now, he's week to week right now, but it's not seen as being that major, and his injury woes have gone by the wayside for the most part this season. 2020, 2021 in 56 games, 11 goals, 20 assists, 31 points. The time he signed that contract, he was off to a very good start to the season, but there were still comments about him being a bust. Ended up with 56 points last year, 26 of those points being goals, that being produced in 49 games. An overall really solid record. This year in 50 games, 35 goals, 32 assists, 67 points. This is a contract that within a period of 2 years has gone from, well, not even 2 years, a year and a half has gone from, well, this contract might be a little bit high and, well, there's a lot of risk here to, okay, so he's a superstar and New Jersey's got themselves a bargain here. This is why the teams that get their star players signed as soon as possible out of that entry level contract very often will end up being wiser for it. Now, I wanted to talk about Jordan Staal because Jordan Staal's contract is one that came to mind when I saw the discussions of the contract signing by Bo Horvat. Now, he signs the deal in Carolina July 1st of 2012. It's a 10-year, $60 million contract. 10-year contract, no longer a thing you can sign. 8 years is the max. The $6 million per season was seen as a little high by some. And he signed that at age 24. It kicked in for the 2013-2014 season. The interesting thing is, the summer he signed it, he was coming off of a year where he had 25 goals, 25 assists, 50 points in 62 games. So the season in between, before that contract kicks in 48 games, he has 10 goals, 21 assists, 31 points. You could look at that contract and say, wow, that's one that's going to bite him then. It's just easy. He's not going to be worth $6 million a year for 10 years. And yet I would argue that Jordan Staal has been a very effective face-off man, penalty killer, and Jordan Staal has been really, really solid for Carolina throughout. So that is a contract that I think aged pretty well, even though that $6 million price tag does look high if you only look at points. This is something I've discussed as well. There's more to it than points. If points are all that matters, then guys like Adam Pelech, for instance, in New York, wouldn't have an 8-year contract. You wouldn't see that. And it is just a reality that for general managers in this salary cap world that we're navigating, it is better to have that cap certainty. It is better to have a guy signed for longer term. There's other reasons as well, and I'll get into that in this video. Leon Draisaitl signed August 16th of 2017. It's an 8-year deal worth $68 million. Now, at the time that this is signed by Peter Chiarelli, he was coming off of a season where in 82 games he had 29 goals, 48 assists, 77 points. And there were plenty of people who said that contract's too much money. There was one good year for Draisaitl. You can't just give him that money after one good year. The reality is we're now in a world where you can. A young player has a really good year, he absolutely is going to get paid. And he's going to get paid long term. The following season in 78 games, 25 goals, 45 assists, 70 points. The numbers did not come up that high for Draisaitl in the first year of that deal. But the following year in 82 games, 50 goals, 55 assists, 105 points. In that season, all of a sudden the contract went from, we think this is too high, to what a bargain. What a bargain this is. And that's why you signed that 8-year deal. You were betting on, during this contract, this player's going to hit that next level, and we want him here, right? Now, I want to get into Roman Josi, and I want to end off with this one. The Roman Josi contract was signed October 29th of 2019, and my lord, there were a lot of people dunking on this for what a horrible contract it was. What a terrible decision. It's an 8-year deal worth $72,472,000 in total. It will take him until shortly after his 38th birthday. And so this was seen as a huge mistake. What is Nashville thinking? You might as well have let him leave for that amount of money and that amount of term. All he did was win the Norris the year after he signed it. Won the Norris in 2020, and this past season he was second in Norris voting. Roman Josi is a beast on that blue line. So it is interesting to me that the Josi contract, I don't see as much complaining about it now as when he signed it. And that's kind of what happens. We see these 8-year deals get signed. Everybody dunks on it, furrows their brow, and talks about how terrible this deal is for everybody. And then once that contract's kicked in and the player's playing well, we don't hear nearly as much about it. Now, people will circle back, right? If Josi in, say, year 6 or year 7 isn't performing very well, that's when people will come back and say, see, I told you that contract wasn't worth it, ignoring the Norris Trophy and the runner-up for Norris that took place in between. You're aware when you're signing the contract for the player who's in his mid to late 20s that at the end of that contract, he's not going to be worth as much. That at the end of that contract, he's probably going to be not necessarily phasing his way out of the NHL, but he's going to be playing a diminished role. What they're betting on is that salary cap's going to explode. And so it will be interesting to see this coming summer how many bridge deals are signed. How many players say, I just want to sign a 1-year deal and see what happens next year? Because the player's debt should be repaid by the end of 2023, 2024 at the latest. There's the possibility it's mostly paid by this summer, depending on league revenues, how many more ads they can place into your TV viewing experience. But yeah, once that's paid, and that's the part that always gets forgotten when it comes to salary cap. It's flat for a good reason. During the pause in 2020, the financial hit was taken by the National Hockey League. And rather than take that financial hit on the NHLPA as well, they said, all right, you guys owe us this amount of money, and it's going to be a high escrow payments between now and then. But once it's all done, the escrow payments drop, which is the money that comes off their paychecks before they even see them. And the idea being a simple one of the escrow wouldn't be necessary anymore once this is all done, and the salary cap will take off. The expectations being in the 95 to 100 million range. So we could see the salary cap rise by $1 million this summer and then go up by 5, 6, 7, 8 the year after. And what it does is two things. First off, it allows general managers to make new mistakes. While they learn from their old mistakes, they make new ones. But it also means that for these 8-year deals, they start looking better. They start looking more reasonable. And you see a guy who makes 8.5 now, it won't be as notable as a guy who's making 8.5, 5 years from now. Just like Jordan Staal at $6 million back in 2012, that was a lot of money on the cap. That was a large portion of the cap. Now it is a smaller amount of the actual salary cap space. So that's the bet they're taking. That with the young players, the bet is this guy's going to take off. He's going to make this contract worthwhile. With the older players, the bet is by the time this contract is bad, it should be easier for me to move it because a lot of the money gets paid out front or paid out up front, meaning that the salary cap hit might be $8.5 million, but maybe the actual money owed to the players $2-3 million. Especially if there's a signing bonus, you pay that signing bonus, and then you're just trading the cap hit really, and the team picking up that contract really doesn't owe the player that much money. So that's the expectation. That's the hope, right? And at worst, that salary cap will be going up by 2024. This summer could be a very, very busy one. I get the feeling that the closer we're getting to this trade deadline, we're only a few weeks out. It may be a little bit quieter than we expect because some of the names, and I'm thinking Chychrun, it might be better to wait until after the season's done, see what happens with next year's salary cap, and then see, you might be able to charge a higher price for your players. It might be easier to move on from a bad contract. And of course, the longer term for those contracts is designed for a few things. First off, it is designed to lower the cap hit. So for players whose cap hit would be $11-12 million, is designed to drop that to $8.5-9 million. When we look at actual salary this year, the number one paid player in the NHL is Tyler Seguin at $13 million. His cap hit is not $13 million. This is why I find it odd when people say, oh, see, no team with a cap hit of over $10 million has ever won the Cup. Right, but there are players who have high salaries that have won the Stanley Cup. There are players who make a lot of money who've won the Stanley Cup, and there are players who make a lot of money that don't. But the reality is that long term is designed to drop that overall cap hit. Now, if you want a no trade clause, a no movement clause, it's also designed to drop down the amount of salary cap. Now, with the way things are, some of these contracts do become untradeable. Some of them do end up getting bought out. But it is a risk that I've been begrudgingly pulled along with. It is not that long ago that I hated 8-year deals. I still think the perfect time frame for a contract is 4 years. I think 4 years is good. I think you've got less risk with 4 years, but I understand why GMs want 8. I also understand why the players want 8. And I don't have any problem with no movement and no trade clauses. I think they're absolutely fantastic for the player. And if a GM's willing to sign them, then I have no problem with a player A getting the contract with that, as well as using it, saying I don't want to go to that location. I have the right. So when you hear about Kane and Taves and what they may or may not do, they've earned the right to say where they go. Then they've earned the right to say when as well. So if they both decide, you know what, to heck with it, we're staying in Chicago, we're playing out our contracts here, and we'll figure it out after, they have every right to do that. But we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. And I'll go see what Tarasenko got traded for, if that's finally been revealed yet or not. But let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.